good vibrations.
Well, this show very much comes at things from a UK perspective and being honest about things. There aren't that many reasons for hope and optimism if you're living in the UK right now. But maybe we can all draw some inspiration from things that are happening in other nations. And today we're focusing our attention on Austria, where there appears to be some exemplary kickback and opposition to the tyranny that's been dropped on that nation, just like ours and so many others. And it's become very clear that we, the people of our individual nations, are very much on our own. No one's coming to save us, and it's on us collectively to get this job done for ourselves. And our guests today are here to talk about how people in Austria, or at least certain factions of them, have been achieving just that. And it's my hope that the examples we'll hear about today will serve as inspiration and a galvanizing factor for people in this country and elsewhere to show that it can be done if the will is present. So we're talking to Stephen Whybrow and his colleague Eril of the Gnostic Takeover out there in Austria. Welcome along, guys.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Hello, Mark. Thank you for having us.
Great to have you on. Which part are you in? Are you near Linz?
We are based in the city of Vienna, and we have also a strong foot in this resistance in Linz also. So that's our main connections here in Austria.
Okay, cool. So you've tipped me off via email as to a few of the things that have been happening in Austria in recent weeks. Just for the benefit of the listeners, can you just give us a general overview of what's been going on from your perspective in the past few weeks that's of a positive and inspirational nature?
Yeah, I would. I think me and Eril go well along when Eril just takes over at certain points. So I'll just start it off. We can pick this up from the very beginning, give you a short overview of the progression of what has been happening here in Austria. And it's that we went out on the streets for the first time on the 8th of May. So what I could observe within myself is that as soon as they pulled the trigger with the COVID scam, I observed that within myself there was sort of like an energy wanting to come through me, but it was just being held back. I was still in a state of shock. What we have with COVID is what is described in the very important document of Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars. It's shock therapy. And it took time to come out of that shock. And what brought me out of that shock most effectively was getting into action. And so we had our first event, which is called the Festival for Freedom. It's not your usual demonstration. We have music, we have speakers, and we try and mix things up. And the beauty about a Linz and the event there is that it's for free speech. We let people speak. We don't let the experts speak. They can speak as well, but they're just as much people as we are. And that's sort of like the energy dynamics that was put into place in Linz. And I would just be going on the stage every week and speaking my truth. I would be talking about natural law. I would be talking about how this matrix is set up and other various components, which often had very little to do with the virus, because we are talking about a whole different scenario of what is happening on this planet, because it's a bid to take it over by the dark force. So we were building energy momentum. That's what I realized after months of what we were just doing our event. Like, everyone's going to come on Friday to Linz. And even if we're just 50 people or 70 people, no matter what, we'll do it every week, because we realized when we do it every week, we always have that one day in the week where we can remember each other and realize we're doing this, yeah, we're doing this. So there is no backdrop to it. So we just continued, and after months I realized you're building a tact, a rhythm to what you're doing.
Momentum.
Because look at Berlin, for example. We had Berlin at the end of August, gave people lots of hope. Wow, look at it, so many people. You had more, like, people estimated around 1 million people, maybe even 2 million people in Berlin. And what happened from that? Nothing. Because there is the energy momentum, and one of the most hidden principles of natural law is the principle of momentum, and that you do things regularly by showing the source of creation your intention, because you do it every day.
That's true manifestation.
Exactly. So the energy rhythm was built up over weeks and months, and that was in the beginning of May. And then in September, that's where I'd like to have Eril's take also on this. I got to know Eril, who came to Austria in August from London, England, and everything just merged together. It was what we call synchronicity. And from that point, what was your view of what's happening?
Well, basically, it's evident to me that I was organically and naturally brought to Austria, to be in Austria for this time, from London, by the source of all things. And it happened because I was aligned with the source through my heart. And I was obviously chosen by the source as someone to do the job. So when I was coming to Austria, I didn't understand why I was coming to Austria. I just knew I had to come. And eventually I arrived in August, and finally in September, went to the city of Linz. I was in Salzburg, and I went to the city of Linz and finally went to the demo, which they were doing in Linz. And we met Steve, and I met his friends and other connections as well. And we just immediately started talking with Steve, and there was a strong connection. It's like we've known each other for many, many lifetimes. We were totally on the same page. And immediately the next day from meeting, we were guided to do energetic rituals at a specific stone just outside of the city of Linz in the forest. And this stone turned out to be a very, very significantly strong energetic access point, and we activated that stone during the ceremony. And through doing so, we were guided by the source to do other ceremonies in other specific places in Austria. Like we did several on the Mount Untersberg. It's known as the heart chakra of Europe, this mountain. And we did several ceremonies in a cave there, and we activated the mountain. And we married the energy of the land with what was happening in the city of Linz in the festival. So eventually what happened was we carried those energies through to the city of Vienna, you see. And what happened was on the 16th of January, there was like 60,000 people plus marching, and that's never happened before. So that was our first success. The people just all of a sudden began to rise. But on a build up to this, we were doing loads of energetic rituals in the city of Vienna as well. There's several places in the city of Vienna, because what we've got to understand is Vienna is a very important, strategically important place. It's a portal. That's why all the major battles through all the past civilizations have been for Vienna, because it's a major portal. And we finally were able to activate that portal on the morning of the first demonstration in Vienna. And it was snowing. And when we were doing it, the snow stopped and the sky just opened up above us. And the energetics just totally changed. The police stepped back, tension dissolved, and 60,000 people just peacefully marched along with the assistance of the police. It was basically like an initiation ceremony of initiating humanity back into their humanity, because what the dark cabal has done is through this manufactured crisis, what it is a spell, and they have initiated humanity into the dark side by doing this. So that was the beginning of us reinitiating humanity back into their humanity.
You just said to me before we came on the show that Austria will be the first domino to fall in all of this. And bad news for us in Britain, the United Kingdom will probably be the last. But
the second.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. But are you saying that about Austria because of that connection to Earth energy that you were just alluding to there? That it's a special place on the Earth's, energy grid?
Absolutely. It's all life force energy and the energetics of the land and the source. The energy, the life force working through the source, working through the land, and eventually working through us. If you marry your life force with the life force of the land and the life force of the source where the land came from, you're in alignment and you can actually read and decode what the land and the source is doing. So you can access the plan of the source.
Our holistic connectedness to everything.
Yeah. This is true alignment.
And deeply occulted information. This is where we are talking about ancient knowledge of our ancestors. The reason behind history eliminating the natives of our land. The reason why shamanism is so distorted, the way it's represented. You do one ayahuasca ceremony and you're a shaman. No, it has nothing to do with it. And it's information that I only came across after I got to know Eril and actually practicing it, because I come more from an analytical background and studying things from that perspective. But as soon as the energetics of the land and sacred ritual came in and ceremony, I could see at these demonstrations, we've had 3 now, and there's a lot of detail we can get into. It also aligns with the 369 of Tesla. So we've got a lot of background information on this. But you just march there, you face the resistance of this matrix in the form of the foot soldiers, of the police. And there comes a time, like the second walk that we did, that was 2 weeks ago on the 31st of January, you've got this wall of police in front of you, not wanting to let you walk, massive amounts of people in Vienna. And what I would do, for example, and this is something I've never done before, I would just pulse through my hands, pulse source energy into that area of the wall with intention through my breath, and my hands acting as antennas. Now, the mind control version of reality would tell you that you're a fool. Or is it that you are beginning to align with how things actually really work and how the energy flows through you? So what I could observe is that after 1.5 hours, it just fell apart organically. And we've just went through. And
the defense broke and everybody just charged through, and the police had no power at all. They were like lost goalkeepers trying to catch people.
And the people, humanity marching together, just going for a walk, the innocence of that, the simplicity. And I saw things, Mark, where Antifa was trying to come into that march, trying to cause trouble. And I saw a hooligan charge out at 10 Antifa guys, facing up with them, protecting families, and they just ran away. It's like, I'm like, what is going on here?
Full protection.
And after we do these marches, me and Eril and other people, we come together and we start to decode what has happened. And I realized before we're doing intention work, because the most powerful thing you can do is make intentions. And the one key element that we added there in the second march was the intention. We take full responsibility for everything that happens today.
For the demo, for all the people, for the entire planet, we're fully responsible. And because we take on that responsibility, we're in full charge. Not the government, not the mafia, not the cult. We are in charge. That's how it works.
And that's the key element of how responsibility ties in to real power. What is power? To ask questions like this again, which is the most healthy thing you can do. Like, for example, why am I here on this planet? Hey, you fool, you can't ask that. Oh, yeah, I'm going to ask it every day now, actually. What is power? And that I realized that ties together with the aspect of responsibility. When you are a intrinsic part of creation, you are a creator, and a creator needs to take responsibility for the creations he creates.
That's the basic foundation of all creation, is responsibility.
That's right.
And the bigger your creation, the greater your responsibility. The greater your responsibility, the greater your creation.
And if only the vast number of people in society would realize this, instead of the very limited few that we have on that path.
That's why they systematically had to be stripped off their responsibility. So nobody's responsible anymore.
You alluded to this dynamic just there, but the key to reversing the stranglehold of the control system over the people comes from those who actually put these dictates into physical manifestation. So we're talking about the order followers in the police, the government and the military, who just blindly take those orders and put these things into action without questioning whether it's right or wrong to do so. The day that enough of these people, in recognition of the fact that they too have families and children that are going to have to grow up in this nightmare world that's being created, the day they stand up and say, we're not doing it anymore, we're not enforcing this tyranny, is the day that the dynamic really starts to change. And the police standing alongside the people is something that we in the UK can only dream and fantasize about, because I was at many of the demos that took place in London, in Trafalgar Square, towards the end of last year. And with each successive event, it just became more and more violent, not in terms of the demonstrators, but in terms of the police or the hired Stasi thugs that they were sending in there. So towards the end, you stood a very good chance, if you tried to stand up for your rights and freedoms, of being beaten down and thrown in a cage by violent thugs. That's what you get for your trouble here in London. But it's amazing to hear that this dynamic is actually starting to occur in Austria, where the police are standing alongside the people and realizing that they are all one and we're all in the crosshairs of the psychopathic controllers, you know, whether you're in a uniform or not. So what an incredible thing to be happening.
You see, what ties into that is a perspective that there's this life force energy that's flowing through the planet. And it's organized in a holographic way, which self-contains itself. So you have the source, then you would pull it down to the galaxy, to the solar system, and the solar system is integral to the planet, and the planet is integral only to life force energy in and on the planet, which is creation, the animals. But we as human beings, we operate under natural law exclusively. Everything else that we make up as law, and that we need to tell these Satanists, because their dementia tries to tell them, and then they try to tell us that they make up law. No, you do not. Because anything outside of natural law has to be a copy of natural law. And it has to be contract-based, with consent and securing that contract. That's where I realized that aspect of insurance is absolutely key in dismantling this whole system. Because it has to be in a contract. First of all, you need to get the consent of people, pulling you into a contract. Every law is a contract. That's what most people don't realize. It's the societal contract that they set up to us. So everything that they put up as law in their own system is another binding contract to that societal contract that was created with your birth certificate, again without your consent, again through the operations of mind control, parents thinking they have to do this. You see, the whole thing's already artificially created and is not based on the real workings of natural law, in which you need the consent of the parties before anything else happens. So that's where this is sort of the Achilles heel that I realized, is that it's actually the insurance aspect of the laws that they try and put in place. These are actually regulations, and they're not law, for the very reason that every law is a contract which binds to the social contract, and every contract has to be insured, which means that it has to be very clear who takes liability for the damages that are caused.
Responsibility.
And when no one in the system is ready to take liability, meaning responsibility, well, guess what? Then I'm going to take on that responsibility, and that puts me in charge. And you now listen, I will make you privately liable. It doesn't matter if you think you have political or diplomatic immunity. Under natural law, that does not exist. And I write directly to you and I tell you, you're privately liable for all damages caused. Now, will we speak to each other? Because this is an insurance system, and you as a politician enacting what you think is law, which is untrue, is uninsurable. The wearing of masks, the social distancing, the lockdowns, it's all uninsurable. Therefore, you are privately liable with your own savings. So, dear Mr. Politician, can you please show me the insurance that you have for crime against humanity? And that's why that's the approach that we build up a relationship with the political spectrum and actually explain that to them and say to them, well, we know that you're under pressure. You see, that's the dynamics of politics also. These people, they can't change anything because they were never put into place to change anything. They're under massive pressure from the mafia to enforce their agenda. They are all tied up in the things that they did in the past, which is in the CIA jargon is called a brownstone operation. They have dirt on everyone. That's why they are in the position they're in. And they have to do what they're told by the mafia. But on the other hand, you've got the people also rising up. Now, what if you got someone who's holding you privately liable, like I'm doing with the politicians, and I'm on the verge of writing a third one, who then comes up to you and says, you know what? We're not monsters. We're human beings. You have to realize the truth that we want a peaceful resolution to this manufactured crisis, which is a takeover bid by psychopaths. And if you've got fear of the psychopaths, let me deal with them. Okay? Yeah. And you take a holiday and you step down, and by stepping down, you are actually a hero in the history books. You see how you flip the dynamics, and you see how the politicians are not the problem, it's the mechanism of the mafia behind it. And that's what me and Eril can deal with, and that's how we see things manifesting in Austria, where the political sphere merges with the people, the same as the police, and that's how you take fully charge. They're just sandwiched. And that's the thing, I started with my long talk here now. The life force energy of the planet has to come through somewhere. The question just is, where is it going to come through? And the thing is that Austria is a peaceful country. Like, it's the most peaceful country I've ever gotten to know. It's very innocent, and therefore we can do it. Therefore we can do it here. And after we do it here, the next stop is the UK, because I have my roots in the UK. My dad's a Londoner. Eril is from London. So that's where we'll be heading. And I'm going to ask the mafia, what are you going to do about it? You can't do anything. It's now our time, and we've been waiting for this time long enough.
It seems a good point to ask you to tell me about the Notice of Liability that you put on.
The Austrian President, Alexander van der Bellen, yeah. So in 2019, I had already written a Notice of Liability on 5G, on the genocidal and ecocidal rollout of 5G. And I wrote it to all of the politicians. I just did things out of intuition because I couldn't handle this situation anymore. I told them it's a weapons system. It's a mind control system. That's what it really is. When you look at it from an occult perspective. And I wrote a second Notice of Liability, which was also recorded by Age of Truth TV. That was on the 23rd of October last year. And I sent it to the president, specifically because he is in the position to dissolve the whole government, which means that in that pyramid system, he's on a higher level than all of the other politicians. Therefore, I sent it to him. Always the ones you can still face in this control system that are on the highest up levels. So he could dissolve the whole government. So I said, you're privately liable with everything because I command you to dissolve this government because we're not having it, basically. And now I'm working on the third one, which for me is also significant, completing the Trinity. And the basic mechanics of this is that you write it in your truth. We have to realize that these politicians are liable anyway under natural law, because natural law gives us the consequences of our behavior naturally in our experienced reality. That's what it does, and people call it karma or whatever, cause and effect.
Individually and collectively.
Individually and collectively, exactly. So they're liable anyway. Now, key components to this is what I had in my Notice of Liability is that I remove consent that I have never given, which is their dementia. They think they can do it this way. Oh, we show you this. This also is in Hollywood. Oh, we show you this movie that we're going to do this, and now we've got your consent. That's the nature of the dementedness of this dark force that wants to take
psychopathic mindset to ever think that you can get off the karmic hook that way.
And it needs to be said that it's wrong because this is untrue. Because I have to give my consent and what they hate is that this is a free will universe. That's the key component that they hate. Therefore, even in their system, you just remove consent and they have no basis to fall back on because they're the ones breaking their own laws under the constitutions they gave an oath for this government we call a nation state. Now, when you know that with the COVID scam, that it actually was a worldwide coup d'etat of technocracy. When you know that, then you know that the parameters of the system have shifted and the politicians are in no position to explain to people what has just happened. So therefore, they are the ones that have destroyed the nation states. They're the ones that are actually anti-government in government. But they have to do this because it's global governments, which they have implemented. And this new set of laws in technocracy terms, it's switched over to those parameters of technocracy, which they've been building up on ever since they went into China and all of that. Now, we are not running under the law system that we had before, which was already based on corruption and an illusion. But now they've switched to something that is called reflexive law, which is basically lex mercatoria, the law of the sea, admiralty law, those terms. But the key component in this is the following. They have no basis in the law they were operating in before Corona. They have no basis in that law because it goes against the constitution, against all the rights, this and that, okay? Human rights, all of that. They have no basis in that legal system. Now, the only basis they have for legitimacy, and this is what you realize when you read Edward Bernays, is consent. The Engineering of Consent was one of the books of Bernays, next to propaganda. One of the biggest black magicians that have ever existed on the planet. Massively important to understand Bernays.
Sure.
Now, and that's where you get the new normal. It's the engineering of consent. What they're trying to do, and when you read this up, reflexive law, is they want to create a loop system. So they initiate humanity into this new normal, and they're trying to do this. And when you look up the UN and international law, it is the law of habits. habit creation. So they want to create the habit that you accept your slavery, and that's the only basis of their demented law, which I define as criminal law, and they have no basis in it. And the key thing where you can pull the trigger on the mafia is liability, because then the politicians are like, oh my God, I'm going to be completely eradicated. People, it's a catastrophe. This is
Personally
a genocide.
liable as a man or woman standing in the flesh, not hiding behind any job title, not the organization on trial, the individual stripped away of everything else, just standing there naked, metaphorically.
And that's why the new normal, you see, then it takes on a whole new dynamics. And that's the thing, you see, you've got this obedience structure that is a pyramid, okay? So everyone's following orders, including the public. You go out into the streets, you go into a shop, they're all wearing muzzles and all of this, okay? But the question is, how does that pyramid of order following, which is the problem, that is the problem we have in the world, is order following, which is mind control. And how do you put that pyramid into balance is the question. You flip it upside down. That is the only way you get a balance of that pyramid structure. And that is what I call the pyramid of sovereignty. It starts with one, only one. And that's the way out. We don't have to wait for other people to wake up. We just have to realize that we are sovereign by creation, and that creation wants nothing more than our freedom, and we do it together. Like everyone has a piece of the puzzle, and we share that openly. That's why me and Eril, we only work on free donations, because it's about humanity. It's about the planet. It's about life that is the most sacred, that needs to be protected. And that's why we share this information. And it will then create a spiral effect. When we do it in Austria, we'll spiral over to England. And then let's see what happens then. I want to go to Palestine very soon also, because, you know, the future of humanity is the future of Palestine in the microcosm, you see. And we're here to sort of switch the perception toward, instead of fleeing the cities and trying to go to Mexico and have it better there because it's better there. No, you can't run away from it.
There's no running.
There's no running away. And I was babbling on just now. Eril, would you also come in?
It's all good. There's no running away from this death cult. Wherever you run, wherever you hide in your countryside, your safe place, they're going to come after you anyway. Okay,
well, they are everywhere, aren't they? As we've seen, the vast majority of the world has been plunged into tyranny. There's a few countries that seem to have escaped it, but doesn't mean they always will. Just to get things into perspective, Eril, how extreme has the COVID fascism been in Austria in comparison to the UK and other nations? Have you had full lockdowns? Is there mandatory testing and vaccinations, tracking and tracing, fines? Have you got police crackdowns on gatherings and protests? Have there been curfews? And also, how has the fear-based propaganda and mind control of the mainstream media been? Has that been as relentless as ever in Austria? And are most normies there believing that there's a deadly virus and the government is just there to keep them safe?
Well, obviously, the fear-based mind control propaganda is it's there, but it doesn't seem to have any power anymore for some reason. I mean, what we're looking at right now is civil disobedience. It's the beginning of civil disobedience here. That's what I see. And the vaccines have failed. They're even calling it a disaster here. Nobody wants to be vaccinated. Obviously, people are wearing muzzles. And people are still gathering. And nobody can stop the gatherings. The good thing about Austria is the police, they don't want to go against the people. Okay? And people get together and they gather and they communicate and they socialize and they live. They have a beer, you know, they have a barbecue, they get together and they live as humans. And because of this, it's not really easy to get through to the minds of the Austrian people. Considering the fact that Austria is a land of the people of the mountains, of the Alps. So it's really difficult to eradicate that spirit from the people.
And also what I just want to interject here, it's also got a very strong basis in the socio-historical context, in the past experience of Nazism in Austria, which everyone knows about. And they can see the pattern. You see it in the police's eyes, they see the pattern. They know this is, and that's a key component, I think, a very key component.
We're now observing the split taking place within the police force itself. We're hearing about more and more police officers calling in sick on the days of the demonstration because they're sick and tired. They don't want to have anything to do with it. They don't want to go against the people. Obviously, the direct orders are make as many arrests as you possibly can to stop the people from marching. And the police, they don't want to do that. Obviously, you've still got the psychopathic ones, but they're nothing. They're powerless. Their defense really is powerless. I mean, the way we've been dealing with the police here is nothing like it is in the UK. We communicate with them, and they just don't have any power over us. We tell them how it is. That's how the dynamics are.
Such a different dynamic to what has been the case in the UK. Do you feel that people of different nations differ in terms of their fighting spirit and their lack of tolerance for injustice? Because we had the great reopening attempt here in the UK a couple of weekends ago, where businesses were being urged to defy the order to lock down and just open up for business. And it was a spectacular failure. It was a big flop. Very few businesses took part, because British people just seem to lack the backbone and the balls and the sense of dignity and self-respect. We were saying that mind control and propaganda was perfected in this land, so maybe it's little surprise. And I hear the same complaint about other nations. People email me from Ireland, Canada, Sweden, Switzerland, Australia, and they say, oh, I don't know what it is about Irish people. I don't know what it is about Canadian people. They're just so passive and apathetic. And that's, of course, how I feel about British people. Do you feel that it's something that's inbuilt to the very DNA of certain peoples of certain lands in terms of having that fighting spirit and having that self-respect to be able to fight back against tyranny? It seems to differ from nation to nation, as far as I can make out. And if you feel that's the case, why does it seem to be so present in Austrians in a way that is clearly not in others?
Yes, there is, absolutely. That's why we're observing now that they are seeking to make up excuses to come after specific nationalities. For example, they're saying, oh, there is a Brazilian strand of this virus now, so we have to vaccinate the Brazilians. Or there's a South African strand, we have to vaccinate the South African.
And Brazil never locked down, so interesting that a mutant strain would come out of that nation, isn't it?
That's just code word for we're coming after those people, because they know that the DNA activation comes firstly from those people. And once we're in a time now where people's DNA is coming online because of the Great Awakening. Okay? And once people's DNAs come online, they remember everything and they take everything back. They can't pull it off. This is the reason why they want to constantly PCR test. It's nothing to do with the COVID. They want to constantly test to see where they stand with people's DNAs coming online. So if they think their DNA is coming online too much, they can pull them in, vaccinate them, switch them off.
Could I quickly come back to your question? Because I'd like to answer that.
Sure.
Because for me, this is most clearly explained from my perspective with the workings of the matrix. Because, in my opinion, humanity has different aspects to it, which is reflected also in the different countries and the different geographies where we live. There are differences. However, all the people also here in Austria are obedient. They are all under the spell of mind control. It doesn't matter where you are. Mm-hmm. And the matrix, the way it works is it constantly wants to show you that no one's doing anything. Nothing's changing. Look, he's wearing a mask. He's wearing a mask. He's wearing a mask. Because They don't want you to get hope and momentum, determination to actually pull it off, which is the worst nightmare. Because we have to remember, we as humanity, we have the first say in all of this. Doesn't matter who else is involved, which other entities or whatever. Humanity has the first say in this, and they trap us by always giving us the thought loops, the perception that nothing is changing. You know how you see that there is change? You know how you see that an awakening is taking place? Through the quickening of their agenda. And you look at it from outside and you're like, this is a disaster. To pull off a vaccine shot after not even a year, where even the pro-vaxxers know, and that's a dogma of them, it takes 10 years to create this. Even they suddenly are starting to question. It's a disaster.
It's panic.
And the
desperation.
bubble is just about to burst. And now we see why, because it's this life force energy that is looking for conduits throughout all of humanity to express itself.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It happens at specific points. It's in Austria here because we've gathered the energy momentum since May, and we brought it from Linz into the city of Vienna, and we're just very, very close to the whole mafia having to leave this country because we're in charge, because we know the workings of nature. We know what you don't want us to know, and you have to leave them because they don't have any authority. What is the definition of authority? Interesting question.
The portal of Vienna is active now. It's fully active, and they can't shut it down. That's why they're going nuts. And that energy is going to travel through entire Europe now, and it's going to have a ripple effect. And entire Europe is going to rise now within its power. And that's why they're shitting it now. And that's the very reason why they're going crazy with all of this.
We must be very close to a tipping point, the point at which enough people have been engaged towards fighting for rights and freedom that this mindset starts to permeate society as a whole. Because most people in society like to follow the crowd. They like to do what everyone else is doing. So once you reach a point where enough people are engaged in that fight for rights and freedoms, others are going to want to be a part of that movement as well. And once you can cross that tipping point, there's no going back from that.
Exactly.
Yeah, because tables turn then it's the other way round, you see?
And it's exactly the opposite of what we just talked about, where, all the people are doing it, nothing's changing, whereas we know that it's the kindling of a flame. And that is what is really the virus for them, is people standing up and realizing that it's always been a small group of people that have created all the change and have changed the world forever. It always originates with a small group of people, and they've put that mind control program in our minds of collectivization that, nothing's happening because everyone's wearing the mask. No, are you not wearing one? And are other people that you're activating not wearing one? And then that's the beginning of that spiral. And that is the true power of creation. Suddenly the question becomes, I could be the first one serving a notice of liability in my country. What have I got to lose? What is freedom? Nothing left to lose. What have we got to lose? This is bollocks what we have here. It can only get better. And a key component that I also want to mention is we brought the energy through the dark winter. It's just about to start spring now. What's going to happen there? Huh?
When it's nice to be outside.
They're done. Yeah, springtime. Now what's going to happen? Yeah, we're going to have a party.
Yeah. Humanity rises.
Yeah, we've had one spring and summer robbed from us. We're not going to put up with a second.
No way. It's impossible.
I've just pulled up a quote from Margaret Mead, who's not necessarily the best person to hold up as an example because she was a social scientist and she was part of the elite control system. But it's nevertheless a great quote where she said, "Never underestimate the power of a small group of committed people to change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." I love those words.
Exactly. And those people are always outcasts of society.
Yeah.
Mavericks,
yep.
That's right. And we've waited so long for this, not just in terms of the last year, but in terms of the last several centuries, you could say. An opportunity for we, the free sovereign people of Earth, to take back our God-given rights and freedoms and stand in our power after so long of being dominated by this control system that is, as you said, resorting to very desperate means now, and giving every indication that it feels it's running out of time.
That's the perception they gave us, for example. Our time's running out. No, it's their time.
Yeah, exactly. They flipped it totally.
And it's amazing what a different perspective you get on things if you unplug from the mainstream media and all the fear-based propaganda you get from that. But also, you know, in my position as a researcher and doing these shows, I get a lot of information sent to me from the truth/alternative world. And so much of it is doom and gloom, and it's spelling out in fine forensic detail what the master plan is, what they want to do to us. And it can all seem very gloomy and very dreadful. But if you just choose to switch off from all of that, don't look at it for a day or two and get out into nature, go for a long walk in the countryside. And when you forget all this other stuff, you get an entirely different perspective on the world and your place in it. You know, the narrative is controlled by all this propaganda and all this fear. And it just feels like a very different place when you step outside of all of that, when you can do so.
If I may put a picture to that, which is, I love metaphors to grasp concepts and ideas. Basically, from where me and Eril are coming from is Plato's Allegory of the cave. Now, if you look at it from a different angle, the whole thing is that people are stuck in Plato's cave observing the shadow projections on the wall. But the dynamics here is, from my view, is that the media has got obviously this lie narrative of complete deception and untrue perspective. And people are observing that and they're caught in that. And then the alternative media on that level of understanding is correcting the falseness of the mainstream media. However, people are still observing shadow projections on the wall, which is from the alternative media. And the question is, how do we get out of that cave? And this is where we're trying to animate humanity, our people, is to come out of the cave altogether. Help each other get out of that cave. There is a beautiful world waiting for us. And what we believe to be reality are mind tricks. And that's what this dark force specializes. A Satanist is someone who tricks minds. It is mind control and has more to do with mind control than any figure or entity called Satan. And if we were just to leave this shadow projection, I also analyze things, I look at things, but I've not looked at the corona things since 6 months. I can't hear the PCR. I can't hear the face masks and all that. I can't hear it anymore. It's bollocks. Yeah. It's about mind control and about getting out of that cave. We are destined to be free, and we have to act as those free people. It's our planet, and you now have to leave this planet. We have to be direct. You have to leave. That's what I say in our energy rituals. Dark force, you have served your service to creation as the involutionary principle. We've learned that lesson toward our awakening. Now you have to leave this planet. It is our planet.
I command you to leave in the name of the one and only high command of the high source. I'm in command. I command.
Brilliant. It's like the words that Max von Sydow's character in the Exorcist movie spoke to try and get the demon out of the girl there. I command you to leave. Same principle.
Yeah. Because that's when you're in command. I'm responsible for this planet. This is my home. I'm the protector of this planet. This is my house. I command you to leave my house in the name of the one and only high source. That's done.
Yeah.
But it has to come from your core. It has to come from your heart.
And you mentioned earlier how these psychopathic maniacs begrudgingly acknowledge the fact that they're bound by the same natural law principles that everyone else is, and they hate it. They hate the fact that there's a creator God that they're answerable to, and they try and trick their way around it by gaining our tacit approval for things as they see it. But they're never open and honest about what they're doing. They always reveal to us their plans in cryptic coded form. So they never come right out and say it. So they encode it into Hollywood movies and music videos and things like this. And you're supposed to be able to decode what they're trying to communicate. And I don't know who they think you're going to write to if you think you've discovered in a Hollywood movie that they've got a false flag terror stunt planned. Who are you supposed to write to say you object to it and you don't consent? It's just an insight into their psychopathy. And they've not been open and honest about this COVID stunt. So they've told everyone there's a deadly virus. They've told everyone your government's locking your country down to keep you safe. They've not told you the truth, which is that this is a communist takeover worldwide where they want to plunge us into New World Order totalitarianism. If they'd come right out and said that and said, this is what we want to do, are you okay with it? They know that nobody would give their consent to it. So they have to lie, they have to trick, they have to be underhand. And again, it comes down to their psychopathic nature and the fact that they're demented maniacs. But it just shows that they do fear the karmic consequences of their actions if they come right out and say it and we say we don't consent. So they trick us into giving our consent as they see it, but it's not real consent. So they are going to have a very harsh shock coming to them when their judgment comes, I feel.
They're screwed. And they're beginning to feel it now.
And that's the nature of a Satanist. You see, there's many angles to things. A Satanist is someone who hides information. What information? Natural law. They have to hide the building blocks of knowledge because every knowledge is secondary to the primary knowledge of the building blocks of knowledge. So they have to hide that. When this happens successfully, then you have Freemasons building their dark new world order, but only on the basis of hiding that particular information away from you, in which we can realize and understand that authority is based on the responsibility that you take, and not a fake version of a command and control pyramid structure. That is completely artificial and is the house of cards that we are taking down. When we take responsibility, we're in charge, and a Satanist is someone who manipulates through different levels of this pyramid. And who do you want to write to withdraw your consent? Again, we come back to what is the problem in the world. The problem in the world is mind control. What is the matrix? Mind control. What is the etymology of mind control? Government. That's who you can write to. You see? Flip all the tables and realize that they're just middlemen who can't stand up to these criminals, this dark force. But we can. Therefore, we write to the politicians, and that's our gateway to the mafia, which can't touch us, because if you as a shadow element want to come into my light, you have to become light. You see how this works? That's why I'm not afraid of the mafia. You see, they are a bluff at the end. That's what they are.
They're
afraid of us. Exactly.
They're really afraid. Really, really afraid.
And they're probably afraid of whatever it is their overlords have hanging over them, whether it's, blackmail, some kind of leverage is going on. There's going to be video recordings of many of these politicians getting up to unspeakable acts, which is being held over them as blackmail to force them to impose this tyranny. And if that ever gets out, they're finished. And, if the people ever come for them, they could end up on a gallows and they're finished as well. And they're not even the prime architects of this whole thing. They're just the foot soldiers that are putting it into place. But they stand completely liable for their actions.
That's what happens when you just blindly follow orders without responsibility. And they're about to learn their lesson.
Yeah, Nuremberg Trials Part 2.
Yeah, and that's the power you see. Then you come to the politicians and you look them in the eye and you say, we're not monsters, we're human beings, okay? All we have to do is talk. Now, we're here in this beautiful city of Vienna, which is known for its diplomacy. We had the diplomatic talks for Syria. Why don't we do it here about our country, huh? How about that? And how about communicating with each other and not locking you into a prison cell or anything, but you just realize that we're in charge now and you might have to wash some dishes for a year or two. or however we can come up with, there's the element of forgiveness. You see, gratitude to the source. Gratitude completes any manifestation. And hand in hand, it goes also with forgiveness, that we find common ground, because we're not those monsters. Those monsters are the ones we cast out. We don't work on their ways, on their parameters. No, there's other ways, and we're about to find out more and more.
Yeah. So how were the numbers at the Freedom March in Vienna this past Saturday, the 13th of February? What sort of numbers came out for that?
I would say the first one we had was 60,000 plus. The second one was 100,000. But the third one was, for us, energetically very significant. There was a lot of pressure to not have us do what we did. And I would say it was tens of thousands. It's very difficult to estimate, but I would say around 20,000. But it's
because the police really broke us up, and there were people going into other streets and, you know, being blocked off by police with dogs and this and that. And then in the end, we all found a way to come back together and march together. But there was a lot of distraction and resistance in the beginning, so it was difficult to count the numbers, but I think there was thousands. There was a good.
And as you say, it's one thing to go out and demonstrate in the winter months when it's cold and wet and blustery. The spring's on the way, sunshine, long days. Yeah, it's going to be an incredible spring. I think that the momentum's only going to build.
Mark, I can already see us cheering with a nice beer in springtime and. Just enjoy that freedom we've been working toward for so long. I mean, finally, it's time that we get the fruits of our work, and you know, it's this collective how we've done it together. I mean, that's going to be in the front and center.
By spring, early summer in Austria, I think it's going to be over. They're not going to have any power anymore.
No chance.
Well, let's hope Britain follows pretty close behind, because the idea of chilling with a beer, listening to some music with your friends, socializing, moving about freely feels like a revolutionary act now and a distant memory. How much we took those things for granted when we had those freedoms, and now they've been taken away from us. You know, we pine to have them back. And it's just very simple things. These are God-given rights to socialize with who you choose and spend your time doing whatever you choose, so long as you're doing no harm. God-given rights and freedoms that no one has the right to take away from you. And we've got to get those back.
That's why it happens in Vienna first and then the rest of Europe.
We already have someone in London who is serving a notice of liability to Boris Johnson based on natural law.
Mm-hmm. And, was it Michael Bernassia?
It's a good friend of ours called Ahmed. And we've done an interview also with him, and he also recorded trying to serve the notice of liability. So for me, it feels like you see, it's always the first domino they protect. We have to realize this. Like when that first domino falls, like it's going to be much easier to do it in other countries. That's the thing, because it's holographic, like everything is, and it's a holographic pyramid. Which when one pyramid in one country falls, like they basically all fall.
Yeah. Unfortunately, our friend didn't have any success. He hasn't had any success yet in being able to hand in the notice of liability and to get a printed stamp or a receipt for it, because they just won't take it from him. You know?
But he's keeping going. He's pressing on with that, is he?
Keeping the momentum, and eventually it's going to break.
Yeah,
and we've instructed him to perform specific ceremonies in specific places and locations in London as well. So eventually, the energetics of what we've done here is going to be reached to London, and it's going to be able to be accessed. So the inner dynamics will change, and eventually will succeed in London as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about this domino effect. I remember very much the events of 1989, towards the end of 1989. I'm probably a bit older than you guys, but I remember the fall of the Soviet Union and the fall of the Berlin Wall, the fall of the Ceausescu regime in Romania. All these things happened within a few weeks of each other towards the end of 1989. And they were unthinkable before that. You know, people living in communist East Germany, East Berlin, with that wall there separating them from the West, probably never imagined that they would ever see freedom in their lives. Yet by the end of that year, everything had crumbled, and it was one thing after another. There was the Tiananmen Square event in China that year as well, and one thing after another just came crashing down in a short period of time. And I really hope that we're due another display of that this year.
Yeah, the thing is that with this tyranny, you have to stand up right from the beginning, because you know what's coming down the pipe, and they've just failed. You see, they've failed. We can see it in how quickly they've progressed with their agenda, doing it so quick. They didn't have that planned. You've got structures in place by them by the year 2030, Agenda 2030, and that's really what they go by. I know this. They didn't lie on that one, but they're just failing. This is where we can see they are failing.
No, they have failed. Even though on a surface level it appears that they're succeeding in a lot of countries, that's them failing, because what we're going to see right now is complete civil disobedience everywhere.
All this shit they've rolled out over the past year, ordinarily they would take 10 years to do that. And, you know, I'm sure a while back the plan was that between 2020 and 2030, they would slowly, gradually unroll different aspects of this very slyly, very covertly. But instead, they've thrown everything at us all at once because they thought, we don't have 10 years to do this. We got to do this now. And that's a good sign.
Their plan was from 2021 to 2030, you see, and they already started pulling it off 2020 because they're so desperate.
And they've just exposed themselves by doing that.
Absolutely. You see, it goes back to the nature of this force, also this dark force. You can call it whatever you want, but it is insidious. You see, the way they set up the European Union, it's a fascist communist organization. And people have no clue what the European Union even is, you see. It's an insidious force. But the way they've handled this crisis is just a catastrophe. When you really look at it, it's an absolute catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, awesome conversation. Are there any points that we've not covered that you would like to add?
Well, we covered quite a lot, and it's wonderful to have this talk with you, because I specifically wrote to you because the most important people for me are the people like you, like Mark, like David Icke, who've really had a massive impact on the world, if you know it or not. You see, you definitely had on my life, reading those 2 books, and so many things that came into my perspective. And now I'm just in a position where I'm finally able to share my piece of the puzzle, which I was like studying for 11 years, just researching, and now I could step into my power and share this together, because what we need right now is that shining light at the end of the tunnel, because it's been ridiculous the last year. It's also not been easy for us, you know. It's massive. Just massive what we have to face, and we're finally crawling out of that hole. And it's very symbolic that it's the end of the winter now and beginning of spring. It feels like that in the process also for freedom, because that's the only thing we're interested in. We're not interested in anything else, are we?
Nothing. We're going to take this planet back. Simple as that.
Yeah. I went for a walk just before we recorded this conversation, just went out for a few minutes, and it really felt like spring today. There's birds singing, there's flowers coming out, you know, it's quite mild, it's quite warm, and it just feels like the winter is over, spring is on its way, and I like to think that's symbolic of better fortunes on the way for humanity.
That's because nature, Mother Earth, is on our side, in full alliance with what we're doing. She's on our side, and the spring is going to come early this year.
Yep. Great. I'm so glad you reached out to me, Steve, because we've had a great conversation today, and I'm sure this is going to serve as inspirational for many people that hear it. Do you want to direct listeners to any of your resources online, any sites or any pages connected to what you're doing?
Well, I'm still on YouTube, funnily enough, so you can find me there under Steve Whybrow. I have a lot of things also from Eril there, because we've teamed up together as the Gnostic Takeover. you find me or me and Eril's work on BitChute through the Gnostic Takeover, and also on Telegram. Gnosis Unity we've got a group there also, and that's where people can find us.
Okay, awesome. Well, guys, thanks for coming on today.
We're on the One Great Network as well now.
Oh yeah, we're also on the One Great Work. Yeah, exactly.
One Great Work Network. Yeah, I've got a page on that, and you're on there as well. Brilliant.
Yeah, great, wonderful.
And that's onegreatworknetwork.com.
We're sick and tired of just people stating the problem and
exactly
not talking about any solutions and how we're going to deal with the situation.
Exactly.
So it's good to talk about solutions and uplift the people's spirits again, so put them back into their power.
Life.
Yeah. So that they're like, oh, hold on, maybe there's a way.
Yeah.
There needs to be unity in the solutions, though, because over the months there's been little pockets here and there. I've got emails from people saying, "Oh, I'm organising this protest," or "I'm sending a letter off to this person," and there's little bits of resistance, but there's no cohesion to it. There's no unity to it. You just got like 200 little tiny projects instead of 200 people coming together on one massive project. I don't know what that's going to take.
Yeah, because the people of the United Kingdom have been so divided systematically throughout the generations anyway, and that's the problem.
And they did it earliest in the UK, we have to remember. You see, the earliest was in the UK. You can also see it when they joined the European Union, 68. Austria joined in 1995, you see. And always when I've been to Britain, because I've got family there, massive amount of family, I don't feel comfortable. They are completely screwed in their minds. I can't connect with them properly.
Yeah. I hate being here now. I mean, when I was growing up, I thought this is a great place to live. It's probably the best country in the world because you're trained to think of it that way. But actually, it's probably one of the worst countries in the world to be. If you're awake and aware and you know what's going on, it just feels like a hellhole to me. Just godforsaken, wretched land.
You can't speak to anyone there. Everyone keeps themselves to themselves. And when you talk to someone, it's like, what do you want from me? Do I know you? I don't know you. Why are you talking to me? But it's not like that at all here. Everybody says hello to each other. People have conversations. Humanity still exists here.
But it's also, again, because of the energy that we've built up. And it's been the same in Austria here. So people called, doing it's like Austria is the same as in Britain, but it's the energy momentum that has changed our experience. And we're bringing that to London. I guarantee that to you, because that's where my connections are. And I've never been to London properly, and that's what I really want to catch up on. And let's see what comes from that. We really are due a proper festival, Oh,
God, yeah.
Absolutely due.
We need a big party at the end of all of this. Just release all that pent up frustration.
It's gonna happen.
This is just picking up vibrations. I'm picking up vibrations. I'm picking up vibrations. I'm picking up